Okay, let's just jump right into it. You've definitely seen the headlines swirling around about TikTok, right? But the real story behind the potential ban? Oh, it's way more complicated, and honestly, a lot more interesting than you probably think. So this isn't just some hypothetical threat being thrown around, no, this is now actual US law. And the ultimatum it lays out is crystal clear. TikTok's parent company has to sell off its US operations, or the app gets shut down for good in the States. Which brings us to part 1, the ultimatum. I mean, how on earth did we get here, right? How does an app that's mostly known for, dance challenges and memes, suddenly find itself smack in the middle of a huge geopolitical showdown? It's a great question, and to really get to the bottom of it, we have to look past the funny videos and all the scrolling and focus on something much more fundamental. Who actually owns the app? And that brings us to part 2. This is where we really get into the nitty-gritty of it all. We're talking about a story that's all about data, power, and yeah, a pretty healthy dose of paranoia. Just look at this number. 170 million. That's how many Americans are on TikTok. I mean, it's not just an app. It's a massive platform for creators, for millions of small businesses, and for just everyday communication. And this slide really lays out the core conflict perfectly. On one side, you have this huge, deeply embedded American cultural thing. 170 million users, 7 million businesses. And on the other side, it's all owned by a single parent company, ByteDance, which is headquartered in Beijing. Now, why does that matter? Well, it's because of China's legal framework. There are these specific national security and data laws that basically say the government can compel companies to cooperate. And the big worry, the central fear here, is that those laws could be used to force ByteDance to hand over all that American user data directly to the Chinese government. And, this isn't just a what-if scenario. There's actually a direct mechanism for this kind of influence. It's called a golden share. Think of it like this. A government-linked firm owns just a tiny 1% stake in a key ByteDance subsidiary, but that tiny stake gives them special rights, including a seat on the board. So they have a direct line in. And look, the US is definitely not alone in feeling this way. If you look at this chart, you can see that a whole bunch of other countries have raised similar concerns. We're talking about everything from partial bans on government devices, like in the UK and Australia, to complete nationwide bans, like in India. Okay, so let's move on to part 3. With this threat of a ban looming over their heads, TikTok came back with a proposal. And it wasn't a small one, it was a massive, multi-billion-dollar plan designed to try and put all these fears to rest. They called it Project Texas. This was their big, expensive answer to the problem. A really unprecedented effort to basically build a digital fortress around US user data and prove, once and for all, that they could be trusted. And on the surface, the plan sounded pretty solid, right? Step 1. Create a whole new, separate US-based company. Let Oracle, a trusted US company, inspect their code and algorithms. I mean, sounds like problem solved, right? Well, as we get into part 4, not exactly. Because when a group of independent researchers over at Internet Safety Labs really started digging in and looking under the hood of this whole Project Texas deal, they found some, let's say, pretty serious problems. So take a look at the ownership structure of this quote-unquote new US TikTok company. Here's the kicker. Even after all of this, the original parent company, ByteDance, still holds on to a nearly 20% stake. That's a pretty significant piece of the pie. In short, it might be the worst of all possible worlds. Wow, that is a pretty stark conclusion, right? It comes directly from that research report, and let me show you exactly why they came to that conclusion. Okay, so here's the catch. According to the critics, the original fear that the Chinese government might get your data, that risk doesn't entirely go away because ByteDance is still involved. But now there's a new reality. All that data is also being managed by Oracle, which, well, they're a registered data broker. Their business is selling personal information. But wait, it gets even bigger. The whole data collection issue goes way beyond just the TikTok app itself. Look at this note. 48,000. What on earth could that possibly refer to? Well, that is the number of other mobile apps that are sharing data with TikTok. They do it through these little pieces of code called software development kits, or SDKs. So we're talking about thousands of other apps for school, for health, finance, even dating apps. And they're all part of this huge invisible network that's feeding personal information right back into TikTok servers. Okay, so that brings us to our final section, your data, their rules. After digging through all of this, what's the big takeaway? What should you really understand about this whole incredibly complex situation? This table, I think, breaks it down really nicely. You have the original concern on the left, so Chinese government access. The fix was to isolate the data in the US, but the reality? ByteDance still owns almost 20%. Then there's data security. The fix? A new US company manages it. The reality? That company is overseen by Oracle, a data broker. And finally, data collection. The idea was to contain it to the app, but the reality is this huge network of 48,000 other apps is feeding data in. So the fix doesn't seem to quite fix it. And what's so fascinating is that the whole debate has kind of shifted. It started as, who has your data? But now it's become something bigger. Is one company holding your data really any safer than another? This whole thing has really just pulled back the curtain on a much larger truth about our digital privacy and, who's making money off of it. Which leaves us with this final question. When your personal data is the prize, does it really matter who wins? It's a question that goes so much deeper than just TikTok. It really forces all of us to think about the rules of this game we're all playing. A game where our personal information has become the most valuable asset on the entire board.